What is up? And welcome to this video. I'm here with my friend Anna Angelic. My name is Yancey Strickler, and today we're going to talk about a post that Anna wrote a bit ago called The End of Efficiency. And Anna's going to start us off. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Hi, everyone. And the reason I suggested Yancey this post is because it got a lot of attention. People seem to be thinking about it. So since people are thinking about it, let's talk about it and give them some more materials to think about it. So let's go. All right, so basically what happened before then in my decided to bring tipping again is that he kind of summarize the feeling that a lot of industries are feeling, not just hospitality industry, which is basically like, why would I even bother reopening all of this when things are not going to look the same, and much less importantly, when I cannot capitalize on the experience that I'm charging my customers for. What he summarized here is that even when a lot of hospitality or retail, or even when you think about industries reopen, they're going to be operating at 50% capacity, at a safe capacity. And the question is, does 50% capacity make sense? And especially, does it make sense in a world that is geared for efficiency? And a world that's geared for efficiency is a world that maximizes revenue per square footage, that maximizes money that's invested, that doesn't like fat sitting on a balance sheet, that doesn't like things not working at their optimal speed, capacity, and resources. But once the pandemic came and that world came to a halt, it did not just introduce what we think of like, oh, the world stopped. It actually forced us to start thinking about, well, what if we function at 75%? What if we function at 50%? How does that look? And what if all of a sudden those big pandemics or climate crisis or something that really puts the world to a halt or critically alters how the world functions become something that we operate on? Do we need to have resources in our pantry or in our warehouses or our balance sheets? And what does that mean for the ways we work, for the ways of working? So take a step back. Efficiency was really invented 100 years ago with the industrial production, when it was a bigger status symbol to have something that was made in a factory than to wear something that your grandmother made. So there was entire industrial aesthetics of the modernism. When you think about it, they're like, for the IKEA, for example, there are 15 billion bookshelves built every minute in the world. So that is standardization, uniformity, like set expectations. When you buy a Billy bookcase, you know that you'll be able to put it together, you know how it's going to look like, and you know exactly how it's going to last. So what bureaucracy and that efficiency that came with it brought is a very predictable, stable, expectable world. If you do X, you know what's going to happen Y. You know exactly what the outcomes are going to be. And in terms of organizations, that really worked very well, because you would create certain positions, you would hire people for those positions, you would have a strict process, you would have a strict value chain, and everything worked to maximize the time, the input that came in until it didn't. So we all work, so like, as consumers, the way we live, we work, we play, it was maximized towards efficiency. And we take vacations in order to get rest, in order to be able to work harder when we come back. Open office, for example, open office plans, where like, oh, we have kombucha taps, and there is beer, and there is lunch, and there is like this elevating world consciousness mantras, but in fact, they serve to pack as many people as possible, as little space as possible. Retailers, it's cheaper for Zara to produce 1 million pieces of something than 100,000 pieces of something. In terms of retail, that efficiency was so honed in that overproductions were more efficient than underproduction. Like, look at airlines, for example. In Europe, those cheap airlines, they fly distances shorter than 300 miles. Like, what's the point? Not only that, there is another efficiency push, which is like, you pay for a pillow, you pay for a snack, you pay for to board first, you pay for every piece of luggage. Like, you on EasyJet, you can board with like a backpack now. So they kind of like efficiency is dragging as much as you can from every single passenger. There is also like nursing homes, pack as many people, old people as you can, and of course, like, then coronavirus comes, and you know, like, then the nursing homes are an epicenter. So there's like a lot of drive for efficiency across different industries. Even in restaurant in New York, like, we're all sitting in each other's laps, and you put down the fork, and there's like, oh, there is check for whenever you're ready. Like, it means now, because we need to turn this table around, because we need to have X amount of people in order to have margins. So basically, we're used to that world where we ourselves want to also optimize every moment of our lives. So now, what now happens when all of that comes to a halt? So we have lessons from industries that never operate on efficiency, like luxury industry is one of those. Artisanship, craftsmanship. In luxury industry, if you think about Rolls-Royce, they had the biggest run of cars in 2019, and that biggest run was a little bit more than 5,000 cars, because luxury operates on value versus volume model. So that means that each car is made, value of each car is made bigger, but not through increasing the volume of production, but through increasing the materials, the components, the quality of each car. Ferrari has way more cars than way less cars, sorry, than GM, for example, but its value higher. They have 10,000 cars a year only. Hermes creates bottlenecks on purpose. And what the point is not only to build that desire, it's just that building things that are high quality takes a lot of time. And not only takes a lot of time, it takes also like dealing with a lot of fuzziness, a lot of personal relationships. That means where the leather comes from. Oh, is the expert who works with leather available? Or is that expert teaching the next generation of experts and spending his or her time passing on the knowledge? Each bag takes 20 hours to make. How are you going to make 1,000 bags? Well, don't make 1,000 bags. Make 50 bags, but they're going to be top notch. So we're now forced to kind of think, like, are there any models, business models that work in other industries that allow those industries to create unbelievable value and to make people pay for that value and extract profit that are not based on efficiency? So luxury is maybe just top of the mind, and it will help us understand what business models are possible if we look specifically at 5 efficiency shifts. First one is demassification. So I mentioned the example of a Billy bookshelf. What industries are made for is to create the greatest possible number of goods for the greatest possible number of people. So when we have something that's demassified, that means that we are creating something that's more targeted. More targeted requires more despecialized teams in order to create what is personalized. If you want to add a Billy bookcase in a specific color, that is going to impact how IKEA has its process done internally. The next one is this fuzziness of despecialization. So when you had like traditional tailorist factory, you had a person who did the screws, or you had a person who put cucumbers in a plastic bags. And they did that one thing 8 hours a day, like after the work regulations came in, but who knows how many hours a day before that. And they did that one thing. And then the next person put those cucumbers in a box, and the next person packed the boxes, and so on. So, but today, to answer to complexities of today's world, and honestly, the collective problems that we are having with the climate change, with social inequality, and so on, we have to move away from that despecialization and ask, is maybe a holistic approach best? And how is that applied to actually thinking about resources and human resources above all? Is the fact that you don't hire a person who is, even in creative industries, we're still seeing sort of titles like copywriter, creative director, art director, strategist, content strategist. They're very narrowly defined roles. And even if you step outside of that role, there are like, people are like, wait, why are you doing that? Why are you not doing this? Or like there are questions asked. Whereas the best idea to sort of take a step back is this person going to help me move the culture and grow this business? Is this person going to help this other person do their job better? And is this other person going to help this other job better? And so on and so on. So that is completely different hiring equation. And it is definitely much harder than having a job description. So then there is decentralization, which is which is how all of us are working today. And I talked with a number of people, and from executive level on to mid managers, and they found themselves to be more productive, more coordinated with the rest of their teams when they were in the same offices. So the question now is like, okay, they have increased empathy, a study found, but they feel less connection. So all those meetings that we were having in the offices, what did they really serve to coordinate our efforts, or something else? I mean, or to socialize? So in any event, decentralization comes from not to have a clear chain of command, but also figuring out how to use local data and local signals. For example, in this decentralized retail, those local retailers actually are faring better than those that have just centralized department stores, because they know the tastes and of their local customers better. And not only that, they know what is flying off the shelves, what is the demand for. And I think Martin Sorrell said, I spent 32 million pounds a year on keeping this office space going. I would rather invest that in people rather than. And the entire study that Financial Times did on what is the future of offices says that like packing 7,000 people in one building may be the thing of the past. And honestly, the more time passes, the more it becomes crazy that you have to go and wait in an elevator and go to your desk. And then, you know, like it really does make us question, like, is decentralization better because it allows us to be more nimble, like those little SWAT teams that can send signals to the central and get signals, but also respond to immediate environment. And then finally, this is related to the last thing, which is improvisation in terms of organizational behavior, but also behavior of individuals. When there is no central command, a lot of people had to figure out things on the go. They couldn't wait to hear yes, go or do this or do that. They had to figure it out themselves. And again, in one of the principles of bureaucracy was having very clear rules and regulations which draw predictability. And that's great to expect the same outcomes every time you do the same thing. But when the environment changes and you keep doing the same thing, then you're at a disadvantage. So that's where it comes, that sort of riffing off and being able to quickly respond to what's going on around you. And then the final thing is how to bring back that community that always existed around production. And when you think about it, the way the market way of organizing economic life, it's only a recent phenomenon. It's maybe 150 years old. And then again, that market was built on efficiency, and it was built on short impersonal transactions. When there is no trust, you do have that predictability that someone is going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver, and you're going to get what you're paying for. But when you think about the production for luxury houses, for craftsmen, and for the entire economy before industrialization, was really made of a big group of people who came together, who all did different things. There were sellers who took your products to market. There were your workshops, and there were those who worked at your workshop for a certain period of time to get trained. There are suppliers of materials for your workshop. There are farms when those suppliers work for. There is an entire chain, an entire community that was based on trust and on the long-term relationships. You have still people at Hermes that spend their entire careers there, because that is the way to create something exceptional, is when you learn how to work with others, and that takes a lot of time. And when you think about even today's careers, they're very transactional. They last a year or 2 years, and then you move on, and then again that goes again. So I think against this backdrop of 5 shifts, you and I can see what does this mean in terms of maybe the business model of the future that does not depend on efficiency, but also that does not belong to luxury.
Thanks, Anna. So much to think about. You know, my own book, which came out last year, is actually about this same idea about how our economy, our businesses, our social lives came to hone in on this financial maximizing strategy where every decision was basically made according to the litmus test of what was the outcome that would grow our balance sheet. And that's effectively guided all decisions. And I feel here you're talking about a very similar idea. I'm wondering, you know, to what degree do you think models of success, say in categories or even in broader culture, like shape this? Because you're talking about there being an end of efficiency and sort of new things are arising. COVID is part of that, but is there also that there are like new forms that you think are happening that are like worth people adding on to?
I definitely do think that this would have happened sooner or later, because you have China, which is like industrial overproduction or production, like this mass system, and that the question is who can keep up with that. If Chinese are working, like Jack Ma famously said, 669, like 6 hours, you know, like 6 days, like 9 hours, not what 12, I forgot even, 9 hours a day. It's basically working all the time. So you do have that sort of progress that is based on production. But at the moment when there is nothing more to produce, when not in a sense that there is nothing more to produce, but there is no demand for what is produced, that you're overproducing and there is not enough demand, then the question is, what is your competitive advantage? How do you build your competitive advantage? Do you start doing Rolls-Royce model? So you create something that is very rare and very expensive, or you create something that is very different than anything, or you just give up on being the best, the biggest, or you just give up on the growth imperative. So GDP is not anymore how you measure success. You start measuring, not success, but performance of a country. You start measuring it by the infrastructure, by health, by longevity, by quality of life. So I think these are all legitimate questions that we are just forced to sort of explore a little sooner, maybe, that we were ready for them, because we don't have answers yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering, like how, I don't know, how differently do you think an organization needs to be structured to be thinking of things in that way? Like you talk about Ferrari, or you talk about, you know, maybe Hermes or Louis Vuitton or whoever else.
No, Louis Vuitton is making like...
Louis Vuitton is mass, sorry.
So, right, okay,
Yeah.
so because it's actually important, because Hermes and Ferrari and Rolls-Royce, they didn't feel this at all. because Hermes went down 6% in terms of their revenue. Kering went 14%. So if you produce a lot, you're going to feel more if you don't sell something. But if you don't produce a lot, then you're not going to, in a crisis when people are buying less, well, they were buying less anyway for you. So what I think is that first bigger thing than efficiency is the growth imperative. How do you grow without production?
And so like growth in quality, growth in reputation, growth in
health, in longevity, in rights.
So I'm wondering about like, so say an organization.
And social good, like again, maybe
yes,
that is
social
how.
good. Yes, yes. So Ferrari is clearly an exceptional case. I mean, that is like,
that's luxury, like yeah.
But still, like, do you have any sense of like how you internally are organizing yourself in a quasi institution like that, where you're not pursuing, say, a traditional business metric? Like, are those organizations run in a fundamentally different way, or is it just like we don't look at those kinds of spreadsheets, or we don't listen to the finance people at our company, or where is that different?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the B Corps, there are more and more B Corps that are coming, like Patagonia, for example, is one. And then I think that I mentioned before, Chobani is the other. When you, like, basically you can make, first of all, you can ask at every step of your value chain, am I making economic and social value? And then how do I make that part of my balance sheet? So maybe the money that will go to marketing then goes to making social good, you know, or money that would, I don't know, maybe you support farms and then adjust what your balance sheet is going to look like at the end. But the conversation needs to happen at the top and at the beginning of financial planning. And I think thanks to efficiency, we were taught that to do financial planning just in terms of economic value. I think that's the core of the problem. The growth, like you need to grow every year and you need to grow like X amount percentage, and you don't take into account the side effects. Yes. Those were side effects, like social good, creating social good and social value was a side effect. And now I think it has to become equal, because even when it comes to luxury, like people are like, what are you doing for like XYZ? Are your crocodiles like, you know, happy out there, you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, you know, I led Kickstarter when it became a public benefit corp, and we were one of the very first. And I was CEO when that happened, and could definitely feel the change to where we'd always had the same values, but maybe in the past where they were like, our values were guardrails that maybe bump up against in strange times. As a PBC, where we had this legal expectation to grow non-financial values, it felt like a core part of the job. It was like, that's something I have to do every day. But there is a challenge there, which I found, which is that I would still have an employee base that's looking for clear growth targets related to this. Like, how do we know we're succeeding at this? How do I know my job is actually contributing to this work in some kind of way? And there's a fair amount of trust of people just liking being a part of an organization that's even making those commitments. But I think for those things to actually be impactful and not just be some, you know, greenwashing bullshit, you want to see them operationalized and really active in an organization. You know, I got some of the way there through Kickstarter, and that's a lot of what I think about now. But I think that is, especially, I agree with you that maybe organizations in the past that had hitched their wagon to the growth at all cost train, some of those people are going to have to change their story, even if just because COVID no longer makes that old story possible. And the climate crisis will not make that old story possible. And so I think there's going to be a need for either a different business model, concepts of success, forms of metrics, something that lets people feel like they're doing it right. And I do think there is a human desire for like some sort of progression, but that progression can be of quality or mastery or something else. But I feel like that's another part of this. If this is really happening at a mass level, I think it needs something like that too.
It does. And as you were talking, I was also thinking on two sides, because you have economy based on manufacturing, and then you have post-manufacturing economy that started to revolve around different forms of aspiration and experiences, and then travel and art and fashion and culture and luxury. When you see that all those post-industrial, or let's say de-industrial, because the factories were shipped to China. What we did here was building knowledge, information, and then Europe did like food, luxury, art, and so on. And that is a very fragile economy, as we've seen, because the moment you can't leave the house, it like goes down. At the same time, aspiration is still there. So we as consumers, we're not buying like, I don't know, like this, whatever, face spray because it's face spray. No, it's self-care actually, because you know what, I want to be young forever and, you know, like live, and I want to self-actualize, you know. So I think we started like making purchasing decision. No, it's not like I need this Billy bookshelf, so whatever works. It's more like, no, what is actually, where am I on my own path to enlightenment, aspiration? How do I signal my status? And we're seeing more that when how people are buying things. And the more that people are not paying attention to industrial produced objects, everything is the same, everything is standardized. You have the whole DTC that are like, oh no, this olive oil is better than that, and it probably is because it's created in small batches and vertically integrated value chain and so on. But the question is, those brands are never going to compete on growth and efficiency. So the question is, okay, so we as consumers, can we move the needle and start investing in those brands? And what does that mean for GDP? And do we still have a GDP if we do that? You know, like, so
yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the big questions I think about, which is like, does a decentralized, inefficient, holistic system beat, or does it lose to a centralized, efficient, hyper-efficient system? Like say the West, let's say we artisanal, you know, personalize ourselves and everything gets broken up. Does the Chinese steamroller of, you know, of a mass, of perfecting mass digital and physical products, does that just overrun that? Or is it that maybe in every category there is a one efficient winner, there's just one efficient winner, and then there is like the winner in every other subcategory of non-efficiency? And is that like, so Amazon will always own the efficient space for retail, but there is the possibility to be the best retailer at all the other values people might care about?
Well, Amazon is a good example because Amazon actually allows all this little tiny ecosystem to reach the mass as a platform. Of course, it's not good to have a monopoly and so on, but I'll give you an example. Do you know Haussmann Boulevards in Paris? Paris was all like teeny tiny streets, but then the military had to go through the big tanks. They couldn't go through those streets. So they created those like giant Parisian boulevards that Paris is known for now. So that in a sense, what you're seeing now when you have those big massive Amazons and Googles and monopolies is like, how do they take all smaller media out, media, retail, hospitality, you name it, out of the equation, and how to allow those small ones to thrive? Do you have an answer?
What's that?
Do you have an answer?
An answer for what? If there's if
for
that
the question, how do you keep growing?
How do you compete with Amazon, or how do you keep growing?
No, how do you keep growing, but growing, how do you grow small?
Yeah, well, I don't even think it's growing small. I think it's just growing according to the relevant value of your business, and that that every business has a financial need that must be satisfied. But satisfying that financial need is, you know, that's not the be all end all. Like that's something that a business can operationalize, but that what businesses are doing now is that they are maximizing some other non-financial value on top of that. Like they're maximizing for cool, or they're maximizing for a level of brand unpredictability like Mischief or something, or they're maximizing for a community buy-in. And there's this idea that if you are focused on this other idea that you as a business value and are trying to grow by the existence of your business, and that you believe the public values and could value more, that by growing that other form of value, that will just increase your value everywhere else, including your financial value, your social value. And I think that is what's happening. I mean, I think that we are in a moment where, I agree it would have happened anywhere, but the notion that we can use money as the litmus test for right and wrong outcomes, like climate change breaks that. Climate change absolutely breaks that. Like we cannot make enough money to avoid climate change. And so we're going to be in a situation very soon where trillions of dollars of economic value will be wiped out in a week and no one will be able to do anything about it, right? And suddenly our notion of what is important, I think, changes. So I think we're at this shift. I think that the notion of efficiency has been based on a view of self-interest that's very individualistic, and a view of individualistic that's very white and male, that is inherently, I think, patriarchal, and also has, like, the regime of white supremacy is built into this, and that there's this very singular notion of success and a good outcome that benefits a very small number of people. That system will keep being dominant, but I don't think it's going to be the monopoly that it is at this moment. And that this is the height of that system, and it's also the beginning of the end. And that the next 30 years, when you see Generation Y, Generation Z, Generation COVID, shaping culture, you're going to see that change, I think, in a much more collective direction, in a more holistic direction that could look like degrowth to some eyes, but I think will ultimately be growth in new forms of value, more of a values pluralistic society, as we've had, in the past, as we had in the 1950s and 60s. Like we've had those things before, but we have just let this value system of money and efficiency just run the world. And but yeah, I agree that this is the moment when the record stops.
Capitalism is based on individual gain at the end, and it rewards assholes, almost. Like, no, there's some great ones, but like it rewards those who are most ruthless, who are willing to sacrifice everything in terms of social, cultural, whatever, environmental values for economic value. Yeah. It does not reward someone who is like going to be like, no, I'm not going to like poison this pond, or I'm not going to do testing on animals. So the question is, like, capitalism is very good at making itself survive. So I think that is one big,
yes.
Like, what are there any amendments that we can make to that? And
well, I think it's a name that sounds presumptuous, but it's not. But I think this becomes post-capitalism, where in the same way that like the rest of your day after breakfast is post-breakfast, but capitalism is still here. It's a base level. It's where we start from. But I think that all the most interesting businesses, opportunities, the most ambitious people will be growing like non-selfish forms of value, like knowledge.
Have you visited Silicon Valley recently? I mean, hello, like.
But I think the values of Silicon Valley are changing. Maybe not the VCs, but I think that the generation of projects coming up, I think in a crypto blockchain world, I think that there is a strong push for new modes of ownership, for new models around this. I don't know that anyone has found the exact form. And I do think you're going to see Silicon Valley money go into these things just because they're interested in what's emergent. They're going to want the reputation shine of like being tied to whatever the new thing is. But I don't know. I'm quite bullish on the degree to which our systems are going to evolve, and a lot of that really just thinking that climate change is going to force a lot of systems to change. That all of our dashboards that are only looking at financial growth, like those things are going to be woefully inefficient at showing us the real picture. We're going to have to see that along CO2 emissions, see that alongside other things to actually know what's going on.
Well, that means that regulation has a role to play, taxation has a role to play. Either you maximize your economic value but then pay bigger taxes, or you're a B Corp, pay less taxes and maximize different parts of value. That's fine. And I mean, like, I don't know about Silicon Valley, but I do think that there is a change happening in a sense how startup founders were pitching, Uber for X. Now it's anti-Uber, I think. anti-V work. And those are getting attention because you immediately state your values by saying that you're anti-Uber. But you see, like there is Travis Kalanick going like and disrupting the other industry, which is a restaurant industry. So we'll have people jumping off the bridges again, you know, and so in that sense, like, and he's allowed to do that and even encouraged because we all order over Uber Eats and Postmates and all of that, seamless and so on. So again, that's efficiency. Why is this real estate sitting empty when I can build a kitchen there and deliver? Why do I even need to worry about what's human about eating, the rituals, the community and all of that stuff? And I can just like create like, you know, pork chop. So I'm not so optimistic. Second thing, and then we can finish with that, is a lot of businesses were forced to innovate beyond just social. When you say that, going back to Danny Meyer, is like Chic Shack, make it all those like Michelin-star restaurant food providers that started putting their smaller packages and delivering directly to consumers. So they found this direct to consumer route in order, and when you see in order to innovate. And when you see how restaurants are innovating in New York, everyone is on the sidewalk and you're like, this is really nice. Why no one did this before? So I think that sort of constraints do create innovation, and I wish, and even remote work is an innovation.
Yeah. I mean, I think being skeptical is you know, I think is always wise. It's generally wise. But I don't know. I think that there is an acceleration of a value shift happening at this moment. And I think the things you're calling out are things that more and more people feel, and that when there's a will to shift how things operate, I think that can happen. I'm curious about, my last question was just, do you see things like a new kind of efficient inefficiency? So, and here I'm thinking possible category could be things like Stitch Fix, you know, or Blue Apron, like home, somewhere in between home cooking a meal and ordering delivery. Or things like you mentioning Amazon being a platform where, you know, any small seller can sell what they make. I wonder if that is a business category and just a cultural category that maybe will grow. People that do a good job of sort of packaging these inefficient models in a way that they are broadly available and you're not having to reinvent the wheel to adopt them.
Right. I don't know how is Stitch Fix inefficiently efficient. They fired all their human stylists, so they're pretty lean. I mean, they, you know, they're operating on AI now only, not on humans. Very inefficient because human has only so much time and attention, and you know, they need to sleep and so on. So I don't know that. And Blue Apron also, like their IPO went down. So I don't, what I see is when you think where you can introduce,
I lost you for a second. When you can
I said that it can be where the inefficiency can be designed is where you artificially adjust your target. So it's not 100%, it's 75%. In space, in turnaround, in revenue, in sales, in optimization of space. So of course, no one is going to be like, oh, I'm going to do that. It needs to be like mandated across. And I don't know how realistic that is. But if you want to be an adaptable company, then you probably want to have a decentralized team anyway.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think that is where we're going to see.
In a world where things move from efficient to less efficient, like who pays? Like where does that cost come out? You know, like a Ferrari costs a lot more than a Chevy, you know, like is it that we're meant to be using things longer, or that things stay in the market longer? Is it that everyone's getting paid better somehow, or like where, like there is this slack? Is it that companies are being less profitable and they're less valuable? Where does that slack go, you think?
Yeah, really, that's a good question. Who pays for it? Because I'm thinking about Zara, for example. So they're overproducing, and there are things like you buy it and they're $3, and you wear them for like, they're designed to last 10 times, if that, and then you throw them away, and there is a landfill. So it's maybe at the end, our environment used to pay for it, if for that efficiency. But if there is inefficiency, that actually, I think we all need to pay, because we all are going to live better out of it.
Yeah, that's what
You
I
know what I
was
mean?
thinking
That's
too.
that all of a sudden becomes our economic and social responsibility to pay for
Well, because we're
inefficiency.
paying for it anyway, right? We're paying for it anyway in like environmental degradation or poor wages or, you know, the health inequalities. We're paying anyway. Why not pay up front and
Right.
settle the shit rather than keep paying? Um,
Right. And those, and also again, going back to taxation is like Zara, you want to overproduce, great. You're paying 75% taxes. You want to produce less, you pay 50. You want to produce even less, you pay 30. You know, I mean, of course, this sounds like insane, but like go to Scandinavia and it's maybe not so insane.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, in my book, I theorize that in the future, all products are what are called evergreen products, which was first a pejorative because they always cost money, but just rent to own, everything being rent to own and repair as a way to.
But people don't like that. Like,
I know,
no,
I know,
I need something new. I need to go like, you know, right. So
I know that.
I should be
Yeah,
taxed for it.
yeah, sure.
I should be taxed for it, or I should donate or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's like big
Uh,
topic.
Another topic. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and Anna, thank you for talking about the
Yeah, you
end of
too.
efficiency, and we'll see you all again soon.
Yeah. See you soon. Thanks, Yancy.